Welcome everyone. I'm Maddalena Pinsi, Regulatory Manager in BSI Medical Devices. Today I will provide you some regulatory updates and some insights from BSI. Then there will be time for questions and Suzanne Halliday, Regulatory Director and Head of Notified Body will join us. I would like to remind that if you are interested, you should download the slides before the end of the session. Okay. First of all, I would like to remind that the information presented today is based on our current understanding of the regulation and therefore it is subject to change. Today, we will see the MDCG guidance documents that have been published since July 2020. If you are interested in having information about documents that have been published before July, you can find a free webinar on the BSI website. I will then provide some updates from UDAD. We will then see the implementing measure rolling plan and the impact of Brexit on manufacturers wanting to sell in the EU. 38 guidance documents have been published so far. And around 42 are coming by the end of this year and beyond. So today I will talk to you about the MDCG 2020-12, 13, 14 and 15. As per the MDCG 2020-12, that is related to the transitional provision on consultation, I want to draw your attention to three significant impacts on devices. So first of all, the first one is related to products certified under Rule 13 of the MDD. So manufacturers of the devices will need to apply to the notified bodies for a full conformity assessment covering all the requirements, even if the device is already certified under the MDD. Secondly, the words liability act upon the body has been removed in the MDR Rule 14 compared to the MDD Rule 13. So this means that devices that were exempt from Rule 13 of the MDD based on an agreed justification about the substance not being liable to us, these devices now are likely to be under Rule 14 of the MDR and therefore they need to go through the consultation of authorities process. As a third point, devices that are within the scope of the Regulation 722 of 2012, so devices that are manufactured using tissues of animal origin, which are susceptible to the transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. These devices, manufacturers will need to apply to the notified bodies for a full conformity assessment, even if the device is already certified under the MDD. We are seeking additional clarification from regulatory authorities in relation to the correct interpretation of Rule 14 of the MDR. In fact, as I said, under Rule 14, liability to act text has been removed compared to Rule 13 of the MDD. So if we look at Rule 14, here it is related to substances which, if used separately, can be considered to be a medicinal product as per the definition in the Directive 2001/83 EC. So if we look at the definition of a medicinal product under this directive, it is related to substances which can have a pharmacological, metabolic, or immunological action on the human body. But if a substance is not liable to act, it cannot exert this pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic action, and therefore does not fit the definition of a medicinal product. So as I said, we share these with the regulatory authorities and we are waiting for clarification, but the MDR is approaching fastly, and for manufacturers who falls within the 3 categories I previously mentioned, this means that a complete technical documentation is to be submitted to the notified body, and the devices must go through the consultation of authorities process. The timelines for this consultation are up to 210 days for the medicinal products and up to 12 weeks for the animal tissues. So you need to think about this and submit your application to your notified body fastly. Moving to the MDCG 2020-13, it provides the template to be used by the notified body and it shows the minimum amount of content to be included in the clinical evaluation assessment report. This report is sent by the manufacturer to by the notified body to the manufacturers, and in case of implantable class 3 or class 2B Rule 12 devices, the report is also sent to the expert panel for the clinical evaluation consultation procedure. The CER is applicable to devices under MDR Annex 9, Section 4 and Annex 10, Section 3. It also applies to the assessment of technical documentation on a sampling basis, and it applies also to medical devices for which clinical data is not deemed appropriate to demonstrate conformity with Annex 1. The template includes various sections that can be found here. So it is worth for manufacturers to have a look at this template in order to what the notified bodies will look at when assessing the clinical evaluation of a device. Several MDCG guidance documents have been published. There are guidances related to the PNCF, to the SSCPs, to equivalence. I won't provide any detail about them because there will be other sessions dedicated to clinical aspects, but I just wanted to underline that it is important to take these guidances into account when planning the clinical evaluation of a device. Under the MDR and IVDR, most conformity assessment procedures consist of both QMS audit and a product assessment. And at the same time, the audit of the QMS is under the scope of MDSAP audits. But under the MDR and IVDR, there are additional EU-specific requirements. The MDCG 2020-14 describes the way the notified bodies should use the MDSAP audit reports in the context of surveillance audits carried out under the MDR and IVDR. Therefore, it is related to surveillance audit, while initial and unannounced audit are out of scope. The guidance also outlines the limitations and opportunities to use these reports to support the conformity with the EU regulatory requirements of the MDR and the IVDR. The MDSAP audit reports should be used only in the part where they cover the requirements that are similar or equivalent to the regulations one. So by using the MDSAP audit reports, the notified body might focus during the surveillance audits on the EU specific requirements and therefore on those aspects that have not been covered by the MDSAP audit. In case the MDSAP audit report highlights some non-conformities, the notified body might pay more attention to those specific aspects during the surveillance audits, as well as in case of any concern related to the QMS based on additional information, for example, from vigilance cases or post-market activities, then a complete surveillance audit should be performed. At the end, the notified body is the one fully responsible for its decision if to take into account an MDSAP audit report or not, and to what extent. The MVCG 2020-14 includes an annex. In part 1 of this annex, there is an explanation where relevant information that could be used as supporting evidence for QMS requirements in the regulation is located in the MDSAP audit report, while part 2 of the annex provides some examples on how to create correlations between MDR requirements and section of the MDSAP audit reports, and the same methodology can be applied to the IVDR. So this guidance document is useful to manufacturers who obtained an MDSAP certificate and who are going to be audited as per the MDR and IVDR requirements. Moving to UDAMED, the Commission confirmed that the fully functional UDAMED will go live by May 2022, and the 6 modules will be made available on a rolling basis. The first module that will be available is the actor registration module that will be launched by the 1st of December this year. Then the notified body certificate module by May 2021, and the modules on UDI and device registration by Q2 2021. The Commission also aims to publish an implementing act related to providing detailed arrangements for setting up and maintaining UDAMED by the end of this year, and also the guidance on administration and technical solution in the absence of UDAMED is coming. The MDCG published a position paper, the 2020-15, on the use of UDAMED registration actor registration module and of the single registration number in the member states. As I said, the actor registration module will be deployed by the 1st of December this year, but the use of UDAMED will become mandatory 6 months after the date of publication of the notice in the official journal of the European Union. Therefore, in the meantime, the use of this module will be optional, not mandatory. But the members of the MDCG strongly encourage the use of this module by all the actors, as well as the use of the SRN as required by the MDR. So, for example, indicating the SRN on certificates. The Commission also published a demo that can be found at this YouTube link, showing how the actor registration module will look like. Actors that can register are the manufacturer, the system and procedure pack producers, the authorized representatives, and the importers. In case there is an authorized representative, the manufacturer shall provide the mandate validity dates and upload the mandate document. There is also a section related to the PRRC, where to identify the PRRC, identify more than one PRRC. And there is also an optional field where to describe the responsibilities of the PRRC, and this is useful in case. There is also a part where the local actor administrator shall upload a declaration on information security responsibilities in the context of UDAMED, and the registration request then goes to the authorized rep, if any, and then to the competent authority. I want to provide some highlights here. So the actor should provide the economic operator identification and registration number. So businesses that wish to trade in the EU must use this number in all customs procedures. So you should check if you have this on the proper database, and if not, you should contact the custom authorities in the country where you are registered. Secondly, there is also the opportunity to upload the organization identification document, and you should check with your competent authority how this document might look like. The actor registration module talks about a local actor administrator, LLA, and a local user administrator, LUA. So you need to make sure you understand the terms, and if not, you should speak to your manufacturers association. You should define who the LLA and LUA will be and cover them in your QMS. As I said, in case there is an authorized representative, the legal manufacturer request goes to the authorized representative that checks the information and then approves or rejects the request. And in order to do this, the authorized rep should have been registered to UDAD in advance. As I said, the request then goes to the competent authority that checks the information provided and then can approve or reject the request. And once approved, the SRN will be automatically generated, and the actor will be able to see its SRN along with all the application data. The SRN is specific to the role, so to the function of the economic operator and not to the entity. Therefore, one entity might have multiple SRN if it performs multiple roles. So if it is a legal manufacturer and a system procedure pack producer and an authorized rep, for example, and an importer. As per the MDCG 2020-15, double registration requirements for actors, so in UDAD and in a national database, should be avoided as much as possible. Therefore, actors that obtained an SRN should be considered in compliance with the actor registration requirements to the extent that the national laws accommodate for this. Currently, we don't know which competent authorities will require a registration in a national database, so they are waiting to see how the act registration module will look like, and then they will decide. Currently, our MDR and IVDR certificates indicate that the SRN is not applicable, not available. Once the actor registration module goes live, we will check with the manufacturer if the SRN is available, and this will be added to the next issue of the certificate. It's highly recommended to have this SRN. We also saw the preliminary screenshots of the notified bodies module, and I want to draw your attention to the fact that these preliminary screenshots are asking to provide one SSCP for laypersons and one SSCP for professionals, and each of them in each language accepted in the member state where the device is envisaged to be sold. This is against what's in the MDCG 2019-9 that asks to have just one SSCP having two separate parts, separated by a page break, one part for layperson and one part for the professionals. So looking for additional clarification about this from the regulatory authorities, but if this will be confirmed, the notified bodies will ask all these versions of the SSCP to the manufacturer. The Commission also published a fact sheet showing which information on medical devices will be made available to the public in UDAD and which information will be made available to the public by the Commission, by national competent authorities, by the industry, or by notified bodies. So it is worth to have a look at these fact sheets. Moving to the MDR and IVDR implementing measure rolling plan, these are the documents that are supposed to come by the end of this year. As per the MDR, we should receive the implementing act on setting up expert laboratories and the common specification for products without a medical purpose, so under Annex 16. Now, this is the last part of my presentation. I want to provide you some information about the impact of Brexit on manufacturers wanting to sell in the EU. So, as you know, at the end of this year, the transition period of Brexit will end. And therefore, starting from the 1st of January 2021, if you want to sell a device in the EU and you are a manufacturer based in Great Britain, or you have an authorized rep based in Great Britain, you will need to appoint an authorized representative based in the EU or in Northern Ireland. And if you are a manufacturer with a CE certificate released by a UK notified body, you want to be able to place a device on the EU market because these certificates won't be recognized as valid anymore. So you will need to use a notified body, an EU-based notified body. All these changes impact the labeling. Currently, there is no transition period foreseen. So this means that you need to implement the changes as soon as possible to avoid the risk of issues at the EU borders. A roundtable with BSI about the new UKCA and future UK regulation for medical devices and IVDs is scheduled for tomorrow. So if you wish to have more information about this, please attend the roundtable. So this was just an opportunity for me to remind some urgent actions to be taken as manufacturer. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. We can now take some questions, and Suzanne Halliday will join me for the Q&A part.
Thank you, Maddalena. Just a reminder for delegates to download Maddalena's slides before the end of the session, please. So first question, what standards are harmonized to EU MDR?
Okay, so thanks very much for the questions. There are currently no standards harmonized to the European MDR. The Commission wrote a standardization request to send Senelec. It was rejected because some of their requirements were going to expect the international standards to be edited, and so that was not considered acceptable. I believe the Commission have redrafted another standardization request, but it does mean that there will be no harmonized standards probably until 2024. So the notified bodies have been told very clearly that they will be assessing directly against the regulations. You can choose to use the most recently published standards, but again, please be ready to answer questions about the gaps between what the regulatory requirements are and what the standards say.
Thank you. And can you clarify whether the clinical evaluation requirements are due by May 2021?
Clinical evaluation requirements. So Maddalena showed a really detailed document on the CEAR, which is the report that the notified bodies have to write. If manufacturers have a look at that, you will see just how much detail is expected of the notified bodies. So it might help you to write your clinical evaluation report if you see just how much detail we have to provide when we generate our assessment report. So notified bodies will start to assess to those CEAR requirements as soon as manufacturers start to claim compliance to the MDR. As long as you've got certificates under the MDD, which might last until the 26th of May 2024 at the moment, we're still relying on MedDev 271 Rev 4. But look at the latest MDCG guidance, because it does refer back to the MedDev 271 Rev 4 in some cases. I hope that's what the question was.
Thank you. And a question regarding the costs of conformity assessment bodies with the UK and the EU, with the new requirements for the UK CA on top of CE mark. Is BSI intending to, or how will the fee structure work in terms of charging twice for the registration?
Okay.
For the certification?
Yeah, great question. I hope you saw Gavia's presentation. The UK is going to start to diverge from the European Union, and the UK is going to have UK legislation. I guess the UK is hoping for mutual recognition, but if it doesn't come, then it will be a different regulatory requirement. And, you know, like the US FDA and the EU, and China, etc. So if the UK diverges, then there will be a need for conformity assessment against that particular legislation. If, again, as Gavia said, maybe the UK is looking at all the best practices that are out there, and taking into account international standards and globally harmonized requirements. If they don't diverge, then we won't ask BSI reviewers to do things twice. We're waiting for the secondary legislation that Gavia described before we understand exactly what we're assessing to.
Thank you. A UDAD related question, are competent authorities committed to start approving the ACTR applications once the module goes live?
Okay, so in the guidance that and in the demonstrations that have been provided to manufacturers, many of the competent authorities have set up their own LAAs and LUAs so that they can log into the system and see if the manufacturers have asked for an SRN or if the EU reps have asked for an SRN in their countries. I don't believe that every single member state has given details to the Commission yet, but those that have given details are ready to start approving, and I think it's a great opportunity for manufacturers to practice and get an SRN for all their economic operators.
An economic operators related question, what is being done to educate distributors who will also become importers of their new legal obligations? As to many, this is something new.
Yeah, wow. I guess the most difficult thing is to communicate with the people that, don't know that they've got a device or don't know that they've even got responsibilities under the MDR. So again, I know that the Commission have some communication fact sheets to make people aware that there are products that had no medical purpose in the past, responsibilities in the supply chain that weren't there in the past. Registration of Class 1 devices, again, there has to be a communication strategy, I think, being driven by the Commission that finds the people that don't know what they don't know. BSI does do some free webinars as well, but again, I don't know if we're finding everybody that is out there. Emily, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. So
Okay.
given the significant resource constraints, as the original date of the MDR has been postponed and is approaching in May 2021, and knowing the significant amount of work that is still outstanding for manufacturers to transition to the MDR, how do you plan to ensure sufficient resources to review and approve files for the UK and ensure sufficient oversight for your existing clients to transition to the MDR by 2024?
Great. So my recommendation to manufacturers is to please talk to your notified bodies early. Please don't stop making your MDR submissions and your IVDR submissions. I don't think you can wait and hope that you're going to get another delay in the date of application. Please make your submissions. You can check our website. There are best practice submission guidance on how to get good technical documentation submissions. There are free webinars that talk about what must be in your quality management system, what we're going to be checking for when we do our initial QMS visits. Please continue to implement MDR and IVDR, and then our resources will be fine.
And we still have time for a few minutes for one question. With the COVID-19 travel restrictions and additional sanitary measures, QMS audits requiring an on-site visit have been delayed, as we know. This impacts manufacturing calendar for filing and risk sending MDD extension applications instead of MDR to allow product to be kept on the market. How can you explain that the virtual audits are not accepted under the MDR as they are routine in other sectors, for example?
Great question. And it is the #1 priority for all the notified bodies. I had the privilege to chair the notified body meetings in Brussels virtually last week. The notified bodies are currently filling in surveys so that they can communicate clearly to their designating authorities and to the Commission about how well the virtual audits are going, how much time we're needing to do them, how much we prepare for them, how robust they are in terms of the numbers of nonconformities we raise, and how many times we're being witnessed, because our designating authorities, the MDSAP regulators, our accreditation bodies are all watching us do virtual audits. It's incredibly transparent. We are trying to make a case that it can be considered conformity assessment to the EU MDR and IVDR.
Thank you. And maybe one last one. Are there any issues with legal confidentiality when uploading the Authorized Representative mandate on UDAD?
Okay. So I hope the Commission Legal Services have taken that one, because there will be bits of UDAD that are visible to the public. There will be other bits of UDAD that are not visible to the public. And I could believe that there will be certain aspects like the written mandates that are not visible to the public. I think Maddalena referred to a transparency fact sheet, but I don't believe that that one says anything about the mandate with the EU rep being visible. I don't believe so.
Rebecca, are there any further questions in the lobby?
We've got one here that says non-harmonized standards considered state of the art.
Okay, so are non-harmonized standards considered state of the art? The definition of state of the art is one that the Commission has said that they would like to improve in discussion with the notified bodies. Again, because there is nothing harmonized to the existing regulations, but we have to make progress on them because the date of the end of the transition is coming quickly. The notified bodies are assessing directly against the regulatory requirements. Standards do still help you to have a good quality management system, have good risk management, have good biological safety data, good electrical safety data, but be prepared to address questions from your notified body about the gaps between the regulatory requirements and whatever standards you pick, if you pick the harmonized older ones or the newer non-harmonized ones. I hope that was the question.
And I think that's all the time we have for the session. So I want to thank our panelists and wish everybody a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.